We're going to call the meeting to order. To stand up and have a moment of silence and a salute to the flag, please.
Don't poke the bear.
I pledge allegiance.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I do want to mention that the school board held an executive session this evening at the administration building from 5:30 to 6. And just for the matter of record, we could move on to board member comments if we have any this evening. Dr. Nolish?
Thank you. I would just like to congratulate everyone that was involved with the winter musical Shrek last week. It was a great performance, and it was a real pleasure to see how well the community and the school supported them with sold-out houses. So it was just a great performance. I know many of the fellow school board members were there. And so thank you to all of the students and teachers, and especially Mr. Sean Clunan, who was the musicals director.
Great job. Thank you. Mr. Kelly?
Not to beat a dead horse, but to go along with what Dr. Nolish had just mentioned. I was there for all of the performances, because my grandson was in it, of course. And I was truly amazed at the job that the kids did. I mean, it was truly unbelievable. And I think also our thanks to, was it Upper St. Clair? Who,
Fort
helped
Cherry.
us- Pardon?
Isn't it Fort Cherry Middle School?
No, I thought it was one of the Upper St.
St.
Upper St.
Clair.
Clair that actually
Fort Couch.
had the costumes and provided them, loaned them to us, and talking to Sean afterward, apparently the costumes were made by 20 or 30 parents in the Upper St. Clair district. So congratulations to them. They did a nice job, and we thank them for that.
Good. Anybody else?
I had a couple of comments. I just wanted to give a call out. This was senior week for the girls and boys, both basketball teams. Unfortunately, the girls' game was moved till tonight. We can't be there to watch it, although we were down for the ceremony, and good luck to all the seniors. Moving on, and we did go to the band banquet. I want to congratulate the marching band, and it was a very nice banquet we went to, although I did suggest to somebody that they pick a better weatherman next year. Maybe it should be a weather woman. They need to work on that. Also, this week, I want to thank Mr. Richter. He arranged the Puzzle Olympics that were held up here Tuesday in this room. I was a judge for the competition. My son was here. I know I had a good time. He had a good time. All the kids seemed to have a really good time. So thanks to Mr. Richter and all the other people that arranged this. Also wanted to mention next week, like a self-promotion for kind of the elementary open houses are next week. I don't know what everybody else is doing, but my wife's involved with the 6th grade cafe over McIntyre, so I got to mention that they have a lot of nice gift baskets over there that you can buy chances on. Baskets for cars, baskets for kids, baskets for adults. They got a Valentine's basket. It's February 12th, so you can get something for your Valentine on there if you're lucky enough to win that. Buy a lot of tickets. And lastly, I did want to make a comment. I just wanted to throw something out on the Seville property. Just I know there's a lot. We thought it went through. One of the comments that was made during this process was the fire department requested that, if we sold, could they buy that strip of property that they were using behind? And I think that's something I think we should look into. I mean, I don't know if that, that property is not abutting the street. I don't think it would be a showstopper, but if we went ahead and did that, whatever happens in the future, they would not have to worry about it. They would have that piece of property for their benefit, and all the volunteer fire departments are an asset to our community, and every community, really. I mean, people don't have to do this; they volunteer their own time and effort. So, I think it's something we should really look into.
We are. Yeah, we're going to study that whole thing, Joe.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Maybe I'd like to just say one thing to everybody, that the big game, basketball game, North Hills versus NA, is changed. It's going to be Saturday evening at 7:30 at
at NA and not Friday night. And I want to congratulate the boys' basketball team. They made the playoffs.
Ooh, yep, good stuff. It's
Hip,
been a
hip,
while.
hooray.
Yep, absolutely.
Since
I
every,
have one
I'm
more,
sorry.
one more thing,
Yep.
was just shout out to Westview for their science fairs this week, and a lot of the parents have been working hard on that, and I think that's still going on. I think there's still some opportunities later this week to see the science fair projects. So thank you to the
very
parents and students and teachers at Westview for that.
Good point. Mrs. Bender?
I'd also like to recognize the Batsons, Mr. and Mrs. Batson, who are having an astrology showing tomorrow night. Is it on? Are the dinners? The dinner show, and it's for little ones. The 5:30 is for little ones, and 7:30 is for older people. It's all on romance.
Oh, jeez.
I read about it.
Interesting topic.
So, please, I don't know, can you still order tickets, Mrs. Batson? Can you still get to? Okay, for dinner? Okay, thank you.
Good point. Thank you all. Thank you. Very good. Okay, we can now move on to, I understand that nobody has signed up for public comments on the agenda items to speak. Great. Okay, so we can now move on to presentation by Mr. Vancherry from Wrkshp, Mutual, and Wood for our 2014 audit report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. My name is Peter Vancherry. I'm the audit partner on the audit for Northfield School District. Our firm, Wrkshp, Mutual, and Wood, has performed the audit for the year ended June 30, 2014. I provided you just a short summary of some of the points I wanted to highlight within the audit report itself. I think you do have probably an electronic copy of the report there, but it's a little bit easier just to look at one page and touch on a couple points. If there's any questions, please stop and we can answer them, get them answered hopefully at that time. In the report itself, our independent auditors report are our opinion letters on the first 3 pages of the financial statements. Just one thing to point out in the statements this year, there was a paragraph that's called an emphasis of matter paragraph. It does discuss that there was a restatement of your government-wide financial statements due to the implementation of a Governmental Accounting Standards Board statement number 65. It dealt with the re-recognition of bond issuance cost and how they were treated in prior years. So there's a footnote, I believe it's number 2 in the statements, that sort of further explains that, but just wanted to point that out, that is a little different in the opinion letter from what you've seen in the past. The first fund financial statement you'll find in the report is on page 19. That would be the balance sheet for your governmental funds. The district has 3 governmental funds: a general fund, a capital project funds, and a debt service fund. The fund balance in your general fund at the end of the year of 6/30/14 was broken into 3 categories. Non-spendable, which represented inventory items and prepaid items. That balance is $240,000. Assigned fund balance, where monies have been set aside and assigned for specific purposes. Total there is $6,591,000. The assignments are for early retirement incentives of $1,091,000 and future increases in the PSERS cost of $5.5 million. Your unassigned fund balance in the general fund was $5,501,005. As I said, you also have a capital project fund. The total fund balance in there at the end of June was almost $12,300,000 approximately. And also you have your debt service fund. You have funds set aside in there for future debt service risk and cost of the debt service for debt service of $1,752,000. The other statement would be the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. This statement shows what your revenues were for the year, your expenditures, and then the change in your fund balance for the year. Your general fund, your total revenues were approximately $70,480,000. Total expenditures, $67,569,000. The general fund also transferred monies over to your capital project fund for operations currently and in the future. You transferred about $1,126,000. So your fund balance from the prior year as of the 6/30/13 increased by $1,790,000. In the financial statements, there's also shown as required supplementary information, a comparison of the general fund revenues and expenditures in greater detail, breaking things down by local sources, state sources, and breaks your expenditures down by function and object. In that statement, it also shows what your original budget was, what you originally approved, what the adjusted budget was, and then the actual numbers with there, along with a column for the variance between the two numbers, between the adjusted budget and your actual. When you look at your total revenues, your revenues did come in over budget by $738,000. It's approximately 1.1% of your budget. So as you can see, it was pretty darn close in terms of where you anticipated your revenues to come in to where they actually came in. And the majority of that was really comprised of two accounts between real estate tax and earned income tax, were the two items that came in slightly over budget. But there again, you're within just a little over 1%. On the expenditure side, your expenditures did come in under budget by $1,051,000. That is about 1.5% variance on your budget to actual on the expense side. So you can see on both sides they were fairly close to what you anticipated revenues and expenditures to be for 13-14. Your capital project fund, there wasn't a whole lot of activity in that fund in 13-14. That's probably the first year maybe you didn't have a lot of activity in the capital project fund. Just had some revenues, about $34,000, mainly interest earnings. Some small capital expenditures of $303,000. As I said earlier, the general fund transferred $1,126,000 into that capital project fund. So that fund balance increased by about $857,000 in 13-14 from where it was the previous year. Another fund type you have is a business type activity, which is your food service fund. That's shown in the financial statements on page 25. The revenues, expenditures, and changes in net position there. The total change in net position for the year was a positive $225,000 in the food service fund for 13-14. The next section in your financial statements would be footnotes. Footnotes explain various items within the statements. It explains the basis of accounting for your government-wide statements, the basis of accounting for the fund statements, explains the various funds and the various fund types, provides further description of various items within the statements themselves on the balance sheet and also on the revenue and expense side. But just to touch on a couple items there, as I mentioned earlier, the restatement of the government-wide statements is disclosed on page 39 and 40 in the statements. That's where previously bond issuance costs were capitalized and treated as an asset on the government-wide statements. The new GASB statement decided that they were no longer considered to be an asset, so they're considered to be a current expense when they're incurred, and the net amount that had been accrued and unamortized was written off and restated the beginning fund balance of about $817,000. On page 45 in your statements is a description of your long-term debt. Just as a summary, your total outstanding general obligation bonds that were outstanding at the end of June 3014, $71,182,000. You had retired principal of the bonds of about $4.5 million during 13-14. You also have some general obligation notes out. One was issued for the Beatty project. The other one are the variable rate notes that were issued in relation to the swap. Total outstanding notes at the end of the year were $11,233,000, and you retired debt of notes of $234,000. A couple other footnotes in there. On 49 to 51, there's a description of the derivative instruments that the district has invested in. You have two different types. You have a hedging derivative and a investment derivative. The total net value of those is a negative about $1.7 million at the end of the year. Also in the notes is a description of the post-employment benefits. These are benefits you provide to your employees subsequent to retirement, such as life insurance or health insurance, and discusses what the obligation is, what the actual accrued liability of those benefits are, and so forth in that section there. The last section is the single audit section. This section is required because the district does expend over $500,000 in federal funds. Your total federal funds that you had expended in 13-14 was about $1.7 million. So as part of that requirement under the OMB circulars, we're required to audit major funds that at least comprise a minimum of 25% of your total federal awards. The two programs we selected this year were the nutrition cluster relating to the National School Lunch and Breakfast Program, and also the Title I program. The results of those audits in the summary of the audit results are on page 72 in the statements here, and basically it states that we had noted no material weaknesses in controls over those major programs and no instances of non-compliance in relation to the laws and regulations with those two programs that we tested. So that's a good thing. So, hopefully that's a quick summary of your financial statements. If there's any questions, I'd be more than glad to answer them. Or if anything comes up later on throughout the year, I'd be more than glad. Dave can always get a hold of me. We'd be more than glad to address any questions or comments.
Any comments or questions? Great. Thank you, Mr. Van Buren.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for allowing us to continue to work for the district. We
Yeah,
appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess we could move on to education. That'd be Mrs. Bender.
There are a number of presentations that will be taking place, so we should do that first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Dr. Taylor will be making a presentation on our curriculum update.
Good evening. We have, as many of you know, a 6-year cycle for our curriculum development. And when you have a department or a subject area that's in the second year, which is the curriculum proposal and curriculum writing phase, what happens is that they take all the research they did in the needs assessment year, and they're kind of putting it together in a proposal, and they basically come to the administration and say, these are the changes that we'd like to make in our curriculum, and here are the resources that we need to support that. And so every year we do is we have the curriculum leaders come up and they kind of give a very brief overview of what that looks like for the board, and then have an opportunity for the board members to ask our curriculum leader questions. So tonight we actually have Jim Cassandra, Sue Batson, Nicole Bazilla, and Elizabeth Spicer here to talk about their departments or subject areas. And we'll start off with Mr. Cassandra.
Good evening. My name is Jim Cassandra, and I am the curriculum leader for the North Hills Technology Education Department. I have been the curriculum leader since 1996 and have witnessed our department go through several cycles over the years, and I'm very excited to see where our current curriculum proposal takes us over the next 4 or 5 years. Here at North Hills, we believe that technology education provides technical skills and knowledge basic to many occupations and professions. Technology education enables the future scientists and engineers to solve technical problems and the future craftsperson or technician to develop knowledge, skills, and the ability to access technical information. We further believe that technology education has its basis in the use and understanding and function of tools, equipment, processes, techniques, and systems. A technology education curriculum must prepare students to transcend from the abstract concept to the concrete procedures. For the next few minutes, I'm going to show you where we would like our department to go over the next 5 or 6 years. We need to be up to date with our technology and equipment we're using to teach the kids to use, and also that the teachers are using. 2 goals that we came up with from our assessment is our department's going to strive to use technologies in instruction to help meet the learning styles of all students. And students will be proficient in using technology to solve problems. Our curricular changes. We are going to eliminate a course called Manufacturing Construction. Although we feel this is a valuable course, the enrollment over the years just hasn't seemed to be enough to keep it on the book. So our goal, whenever we're developing courses and putting together our program of studies, if a course hasn't run for 3 years, then we pull it off the book. So this is one. I think it has some value, but the skills learned in that course can be taught in some of our other courses. We're going to mesh our current transportation vehicle design and our current transportation technology class into a class called transportation design. So that'll start next fall. We're going to consolidate digital design and flash animation with a class called Web and Mobile App Design, and we're going to change Web and Mobile App Design to a 1-credit year-long course. If you've ever been down in the basement, our current robotics lab, we are going to divide that room up into 2. Our courses are extremely popular. We have problems scheduling all of the courses into our current facilities with our rooms the way they are now, so we're going to divide up our current robotics lab and make a G14 and a G13. So we're going to divide it down the middle and have 2 smaller classrooms, so it makes it much easier to accommodate the scheduling conflicts that we've been having the last few years. In the 2015-16 school year, we're going to add some new courses called The Evolution of Game and Game Design and Mobile Game Design. The Evolution of Game is currently starting in the spring of 2015, which is the current semester. 2016-17, we're going to eliminate flash game design, and then that same year, we're going to create Entertainment Technology Studio. We're uncertain on exactly where this studio is going to be. It will probably not be in the current technology education area, which is in the basement of the senior high. So we're looking for some other ideas in some other areas to house the new technology studio. We're going to add a course called Game Maker Programming 1, 3D Modeling, Game Maker Programming 2, and also 3D Modeling 2. We had a great turnout for the interest in these courses last night at Curriculum Night. If any of you were up there, we had a large group of people that were around Reuben Clark's desk asking about these new courses. So we're excited to see how they all pan out. 2017 and 18, new course 3D Programming and Game Production and Marketing. And then the following school year, it's called Real World Project. Most of these will be taught by Reuben Clark with a few by Mike Scarpese. We are recommending to divide the classroom, which I've already spoke about, into into room G13 and 14. We would like to add a computer station that will house the printers and 3D printers and plotters and scanners. That'll be located between our current metal lab and our current robotics lab. We'd like to update the technology on all of our computers and monitors and tablets and headphones. We'd like to purchase new textbooks and ebooks. We want to revise or review all of our curriculum. We're going to take a look at every one of our courses and take a hard look at it and see what needs to be done to get it up to where we all feel it needs to be. We're going to purchase new computer desks and work tables where they need be. We're going to update older machines and tools, and we're going to retrofit a few non-working fountains in the hand wash stations in the wood lab and the metal lab. That's all I have. Took I think 180-page document and squeezed it down into 6. So.
Yeah, that's a great job.
I just have one question. For your new changes and what you're asking for, have you put that in for this year's budget? I mean, for the budget for next year, everything you're going to need?
We put it into the Curriculum Council budget, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
We're going to be tackling those issues, Jim,
yeah.
several months.
Just wanted to be sure.
Yes.
What do you have in mind for updating of machine tools?
Excuse me?
What do you have in mind for updating of machine tools?
Like in our metal lab? What we're going to do in our metal lab, we have $1,000 per metal lathe to go get them refurbished. We looked into purchasing new ones. A new one would cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $20,000 to $25,000, but they're made overseas, and they're not as well made as the ones we currently have. So we felt spending $1,000 is much more advantageous for us than to go out and buy a new machine. We're going to refurbish the ones we have. We feel we can get another 50, 60 years out of them. So we have that, to refurbish the machines, we've set aside $5,000, one per machine. We're going to, Mr. Long, who retired here, you know Rich Long, he's going to come back and help us refurbish some, and so that's what we have allotted for that.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Jim.
Okay, I'd like to thank some people too. I'd like to thank our school board for your tireless dedication to our school district. I'd like to thank John Kreider. He's been a great principal for us, and whatever we seem to need down there in our department, he comes through for us. And I'd also like to thank Dr. Taylor, Dr. Venata, and Dr. Manarino, and I know your name, Pat. and North Hills Curriculum Council for all the hours that they put in. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Great presentation, thank you.
Okay. Hello, I'm Sue Batson, curriculum leader, current curriculum leader for the science in grades 7 through 12. I would like to talk to you for a minute about some things that we were looking at for the next couple years in science. Oh, that's not right. Here, wait, there we go. A couple of things that we decided that we needed to look at as we went through our needs assessment. We think that we should redesign our middle school science curriculum because it seems to be not exactly what we want to present. We'd like to improve the success rate on our PSSA 8th grade science and also our Keystone Biology. We think that if we had a more, I guess, integrated flow of instruction of topic to topic through the middle school years, that would be the best benefit for us. More about that later. We want to differentiate our biology curriculum. We have some students that are really struggling in biology, and you know the state of Pennsylvania says we have to pass that test. So we think we'd like to help some of our kids do a better job of that. We want to update our AP physics courses because the College Board has changed the way they deliver physics, so we'd like to keep up to date with that. Introduce more inquiry into the physics courses, and also just kind of look over all of the courses that we teach in chemistry, physics, and all of our science electives because science changes and we'd like to keep up with those changes. We would like to upgrade and renovate our planetarium to make it a little bit more inclusive and make it a different kind of facility that would benefit more people. We'd like to change our LED, our incandescent lighting to LED because we think that that's a current technology and we'd like to keep it, actually it would cost a lot less money and be a lot easier to maintain. We would like to change the whole function of this. We want to change it into a digital immersion theater, which we think will open it up to not just the astronomy class, but it will function as a gathering place for a lot of different courses, and also will expand our public, I use the word edutainment there, but you know, our outreach to the public where we have these programs in the evening. And then we'd like to upgrade our lab equipment in biology, chemistry, and physics just to keep up to date on things. We do have some nice lab equipment, but as technology changes, we need to sort of increase what we're doing and change over to match it. So a little more detail on each of those. With the middle school science, we noticed in our needs assessment that there were some gaps in our content, and as we deliver it, there are some topics that we teach in 5th and 6th grade don't touch on again in 7th and 8th grade, and then we're testing the kids with that PSSA 8th grade assessment. So we'd like to see maybe a little more continuity and maybe rearrange some of the topics and just get better coverage of the material. We thought that one of the ways to do that would be to use asset kits. We use asset kits in our elementary schools, so we're kind of piloting this right now. Our 7th and 8th grade teachers have kits in place, and they're testing them out with the kids. We're going to see how that works out, but we think that we could maybe just sort of revise some things and realign some things. We want to do this because we want to increase not only the PSSA scores in 8th grade, but also the Keystone Biology exam scores. We want to increase the scores, but we also want, probably more importantly, to increase what our kids are learning. We want their knowledge and skills to increase. So the scores are a good way to measure that, but we'd like to have them learn a little bit more. And we're going to try to integrate some of the topics from year to year so that we can maybe address both tests at the same time. The differentiating of the biology instruction, we have some students who struggle mightily with the biology content, and we would like to look at them and say, what can we do to help these kids be successful when they take the Keystone exam the first time, maybe not have them repeat that test over and over. So we have chosen some students, and again, we're trying this out for the first time this year to see how it goes. We're giving them twice as much instructional time with biology, and we're hoping that it's going to increase their ability to learn biology and retain it. The Keystone Biology course is for those students that maybe surprised us and didn't do as well as we expected them to do on that Keystone exam. So they have to take the test over again. They aren't going to graduate unless they can get a good enough score on that test. So it's a remediation course. So we're going to try that one. We do have some students in that course right now, and as I said, the best thing we think is to get the kids to succeed on the first try and not have them take that test 2 or 3 times. So we're trying to increase our instruction in that way. The College Board last summer changed the way they teach physics, and so they've, just to match what they're doing, we are right now teaching AP Physics 1 instead of AP Physics B. Physics gets a little bit confusing. The AP Physics C is a course you take with calculus. AP Physics B was a course you took with using algebra and trigonometry. So most of the students are in that category. College Board has split it into a 2-year course. And so we're following suit to match what they're doing there. In conceptual chemistry and conceptual physics, we had originally, maybe 6 years ago, sort of revised our lower level chemistry and physics courses, mostly the chemistry to match the Keystone chemistry standards because the state was going in that direction. It looks like we're not going to have a Keystone chemistry exam now, and we're looking back at the standards of science and technology that maybe we can have a broader base in those chemistry courses. And we think these students are mostly, if they're taking the conceptual level courses, going to 2-year post-secondary education or to just directly into the workforce. And we would like to make these courses more relevant to them and maybe get them doing more hands-on work, more inquiry-based education, and something that would be more useful to those students. Students that are going on to 4-year colleges are probably still taking the regular level chemistry and physics and not taking this conceptual level anyway. We just want to look at everything because science changes, and as it changes, we want to make sure we're up to date on it. We want to make sure our teachers, our courses, our students are all up to date in the best resources that they can have to learn science and to fit best into the workforce of the future. The planetarium is 45 years old this year. So it's a nice machine and has done a lot of good things for us, and we can still get a lot out of it, but it is getting older and harder to maintain, harder to find parts, etc. There are all kinds of new and interesting ways to present it. Our dream is to take this big machine you see here, and which displays the stars in the sky, and replace it with that small module which will produce video on that whole dome. So we can now take this, and instead of using it for astronomy and to teach, to do some public outreach, which, by the way, the people love the public outreach. A lot of people come, over 100 people a month come through our planetarium just to watch the shows. If we have this and turn it into this digital immersion theater, we can have video all over the dome. We can change it into any subject area you want, and we can take people out of our school building and into the world. We can look at study the Sistine Chapel. We can go inside a cell and fly around inside there and watch what's going on and show the students that are in the room. Just pretty much take them out of the room and anywhere you want to go. So that's a nice change in technology, and it's something that is, I'm not going to say it's new, but it's newer in terms of planetarium technology. North Hills Planetarium really, the fact that we have a planetarium really sets our school apart and makes it better than a lot of schools around here. So it's a very nice thing to have, and we'd like to upgrade it and keep it top of the line. We would also like to look at a lot of what we call probeware in our, I don't know if that's a strange word or not, but probeware that we can test all kinds of different parameters in chemistry, biology, and physics, temperature, pressure. It'll sense different, the amounts of carbon dioxide or oxygen or any number of other things, how fast the cart goes down the track and things like that. So the students work with this probeware, and we think it's very good because we think a lot of the students that go into the workplace or into science labs or into college laboratories are going to run into situations where they're expected to use this equipment. And we'd like to have not only our traditional labware with our beakers and test tubes and those kinds of things, but we also want them to be able to compete with the other students in their class, the other people in the workforce, using this modern ways of measuring. So those are the things that we're looking for. I want to thank everybody here. The amount of time the school board spends with our students is amazing, and we're really appreciate it. Dr. Taylor, Dr. Manarino, Dr. Vanana, the secondary, both buildings, the secondary administration is very helpful and supportive of our science program. So we'd like to continue that, and thank you for what you've done for that. Any questions? Yes. If I could see
A
names.
comment and a question. I received a lot of good comments from the public on the astronomy evenings at programs. And as far as updating the projector, I read an article recently about several school districts who were getting rid of their projectors. Is it possible to go see if we could buy their projectors or have them donate their projectors for parts that we might need?
The ones that are getting rid of theirs are probably not as good as the one we have right now, from what I've been reading. And the changes in the technology is very remarkable, because this new thing would be all digital, so we can sit at a computer and write programming for everything that's going to happen on the screen. And what we have right now is nuts and bolts, optomechanical, motors, gears. So these things just wear out over time, and that's the thing.
What is the estimated cost of the digital?
The estimates that I'm getting are for about $60,000, we can update the whole thing, including the lighting system, which is a separate issue.
Well, I'd like to thank you. You have won a wonderful program up there at the planetarium. I just feel bad. I was taking my grandsons up, but now they've gotten older and they're having basketball, and, we can never make it. But it is just wonderful, and the children, they just love it. So hopefully it'll continue on.
Thank you.
I was just going to comment that it sounds like what your ideas for the planetarium tie in very nicely with the whole entertainment technology idea that we just heard from Mr. Cassandro about tech ed. And maybe there's a way to, incorporate that, as well as I see a lot of applications in arts, sciences, all the other disciplines, but that might be a very nice way to bring in both of those new initiatives together.
Well, I'm envisioning students writing programs for this,
Yeah.
and then having the public come in and see them.
That could maybe be part of some of his courses or things like that. That would be great.
Have you requested money in this year's budget for any supplies that you're,
This all went to the Curriculum Council,
oh, okay.
and finally,
One more.
Yeah, you were talking about the Keystone exams. The question I have for you is, where in the student's high school career or the Keystone, or when in the student's career or the high school Keystone exams administered?
the biology exam is administered when they take biology in 9th grade. So at the
Okay.
end of that course, they take the exam for the first time.
Thank you.
I had two questions. One, just curious on that. You said that digital machine is much smaller. About what size is that?
It will sit in the middle of the room, and it'll be about this big.
You can just,
And you can roll it in and out.
Yeah, you can cart it around and-
It's portable, yes.
okay, and my second question was on the middle school science curriculum. You made a comment that there was gaps in our current curriculum, and I was just wondering if you maybe could comment on kind of what those gaps are, and, I mean, if we fill in those gaps, we'll be spending less time on other things, so what are we gonna, what are the changes that we think we're gonna make?
I just think we need to coordinate the whole thing, because we'll take a topic that, according to the state's guidelines, should be taught, and they have guidelines for if you teach it in 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. So if we have chosen in this district to teach that topic in 5th grade, then we maybe don't touch it again, and then in 8th grade, we give them that test.
Mhm.
And so my concern is, maybe we should be teaching it in 5th grade and then reviewing it in 6th grade and reviewing it in 7th and reviewing it in 8th. I think maybe that would advance the kids' knowledge a little bit better. I really think we need, I know I'm saying middle school, but I would like to see coordination between all of those grades. They take a science test in 4th grade, and then they take another one in 8th grade. I would like to see grades 5, 6, 7, and 8 cooperate on that.
Okay.
Just following up on Jeff's question about the Keystones, are we now past the point where kids are out of sequence? Because I know there were some current seniors and juniors that ended up taking biology in 9th, and then when the Keystone got enacted, ended up taking it 2 or 3 years
taking
after
the
they
test
had
2
had
years
the
later.
course. So are we past that point, or is everybody back in sequence now, or we still have a few more? I just was
I
curious about the
think-
timing on that.
I think that everybody is on sequence now. So I think our last batch of students, am I allowed to say this? Our last batch of students that knows darn well that this test doesn't count for them is in 12th grade right now.
I know there was some bumps along the way with, but I would think that our scores would improve, just that the fact that the kids are taking it right as they take the course.
Well, and seriously, once all the students know that it matters to them, our scores will improve right there.
Okay, anybody else? Thank you, Mrs. Batson.
Okay, thank
Great
you.
presentation, thank you.
Okay, good evening. I'm here to present the curriculum proposal for the Guidance Counselor Department. An overview of our proposal: ever-changing trends in technology, social media, family structure, diversity, and then the socioeconomic status of the communities we serve continually require our approach to assisting students with their personal and social development, academic and career learning opportunities to require modernization. A developmental school counseling curriculum is essential to assisting our students with managing the difficult personal, social, or emotional learning barriers that can affect a child's growth and academic development. Also, future career goals and success throughout their school careers. As the national counseling standards are updated throughout the past year, the content outline and resources used to deliver this curriculum requires updates across all courses in grades K through 12. Recommendations are to update the school counseling curriculum in the areas of academic, social, and personal development, career development, also to update curricular materials and technology, and to develop a new scope and sequence for a continual counseling program through kindergarten through 12th grade. The rationale that supports our proposal: changes to how the 21st century student learns and how they receive and understand information requires our counselors to examine their approach in their delivery of service. The rapidly changing world of work requires our school counselors to be well informed about workforce and educational trends of our 21st century world. And with increased academic demands and pressures, our students face not only educational stressors, but also social challenges on a daily basis. And on behalf of the counselors, I would like to thank the Board of Education for your continued support.
Any
If you have any questions?
Thank you, Nicole.
Sure.
Appreciate it, thank you.
This is a little different, the counseling department, as opposed to like the science curriculum, and what you heard from technology education, as we don't have the opportunity where we're necessarily adding or modifying or deleting courses from the curriculum. It's more of a universal approach, to address those social and academic needs of our students that happen via lessons within the classroom. Sometimes it's individual and group counseling. So I think ours looks a little different when we talk about what we're asking curriculum council for, as we're really just updating different materials and tools that our counselors use on a daily basis.
Cole, we do have one question.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I do have a question for you, and that is, do the counselors meet with every student, say in 9th grade or 10th grade? And the reason I'm asking is that if the student has aspirations about pursuing a certain curriculum, my hope is that guidance, some direction would be provided to the student, and they may think they know what they're doing, but they may be wrong. So the question I have is, are we proactive from a counseling standpoint to meet with these students to make sure that they have the right course load, not the course load, but taking the right classes early on, because you know as well as I that if you miss a class, it throws you out of sequence, and when you were hoping to take that AP Calc class or that AP Physics class as a senior, it's not going to happen because you don't have the earlier prerequisites. And I know that at one point in time, we had issues because of all the testing, and the guidance counselors were immersed with this testing. And what I was hearing repeatedly was, we can't do what we should be doing because we're too involved with the testing.
And that's why you update your scope and sequence. I think we do have a very proactive approach in the counseling department. You mentioned your example, career and work concerns for students and taking classes. That starts very early on. You know, the academic standards for counselors include career goals as well as personal, social, and emotional, and the academic piece. So the counselors begin talking with students and meeting those academic standards as early as kindergarten. The scope and sequence at the elementary level includes counselors doing classroom lessons every year that focuses on each individual standard, which would include career exploration. That becomes a little more in-depth in the middle school. They meet with students individually, but they continue to do classroom lessons where they are seeing every student within the building. You know, focusing on whatever that standard is. The same goes when the students transition to the senior high. Both our 9th and 10th grade counselors, as well as our counselors for juniors and seniors, do classroom lessons and focus a lot using the Naviance program and some other things on career development.
So it's not necessarily one-on-one, but it's like it's a classroom setting.
It's probably both. There's definitely a classroom setting, so everyone is getting the same message, and then there are individual sessions that counselors hold, yes.
And let me make this abundantly clear, because my experience with Ded Davis and Dr. Barkovich and others has been nothing but exemplary. I'm just considering the entire student body and not just a handful of students. The other question I have is, I don't know whose responsibility this would be, if it would be the counselors or the principals or assistant principals. Even though it's in the handbook and it may say something about the student's responsibility to make sure that they have the requisite credits in order to graduate on time, is there anybody checking this to ensure and to give them a dunning notice, if you will, that if they're going to fall short?
Yes, that does happen.
Thank you.
Sure. Anything else?
If I may, Nicole, when I examine all that the counselors are supposed to do and the number of students that there are,
Right.
I often wonder if we have enough counselors, and I realize that this might be a loaded question for both of us. Would you care to comment on that?
Well, I think you always want more, but, you know, we have great counselors throughout the district in every elementary building. We were fortunate to add a second counselor to Ross this year. Great counselors at the middle school and the senior high. I think having a secondary social worker, having 2 student assistance counselors, one at the middle school and one at the high school, tremendously helps. Dr. Barkovich's position, you know, with his counseling background also. So we do have many counselors, but they are very busy, you know, on a daily basis.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
Oh, there's a keyboard here. Okay, we're up to re-envisioning the library programs, and I would like to start by saying I know the board has been extremely supportive of the actions that we've taken thus far and the ones that we're in the midst of right now. I know you've been through buildings, you've visited libraries outside the district, and your support truly makes a difference in the changes that we're making. So our rationale for re-envisioning the library programs, I think, is summarized really well by Neil Gaiman. And he says, in the last few years, we've moved from an information scarce economy
to one driven by an information glut. The challenge becomes not finding the scarce plant growing in the desert, but finding a specific plant growing in a jungle. We need help navigating the information glut to find what we actually need. And that's the challenge of us as librarians, to help students know how to do that effectively. So our research findings from our needs assessment can be summed up by two major points. One is research has consistently demonstrated that students score an average of 10 to 20% higher on reading and achievement tests when their school has a strong library media program. And the second is research shows that the relationship is causal. Effective library media programs directly contribute to this higher student achievement. So we're currently in the process of implementing an integrated model for 21st century media literacy. And that includes 4 components. One is making a balance between print and electronic media. Students need to be able to read both in the world that they live in today. Introspective to interactive learning. So I think, well, maybe I'm aging myself, but I think many of us, when we went to school, learning was a quiet activity that we did, and it's not anymore. And there's a lot of interaction that takes place for students to learn effectively. And then a change from information to investigation. So this young lady right here, she's doing an investigation in the library. This is part of having STEAM in the library. And we were researching polar bears, but one of the things that they had to do was put their hand in a bucket of snow on the left, and the one on the right, see the little yellow strip? That's a blubber bag. So it's 2 Ziploc bags together with Crisco in the middle so that they get the feel of how that polar bear protects itself and is able to stay warm in frigid temperatures because of their fat layer. It's not working for me quite as effectively. And then finally, consumption to connectivity. So we don't just consume knowledge and keep it to ourselves, but we connect with one another with the knowledge that we gain. Our technology recommendations are increased technology hardware for student access. iPads at the elementary. Right now we have about 60 iPads in each elementary building. And those aren't just for the library. What happens is the library manages those, checks them out to teachers, checks them out so that they can be used in centers, checks them out to classrooms. So we do a lot of circulation in terms not just of print materials, but technology as well. Headphones, there's a lot of need for those in the primary grades. And then Apple TV for projection and sharing creative projects. And then increased electronic databases for reliable information access. We're fortunate that Dr. Taylor provides very effective databases at the secondary level, and we're looking to expand that a little bit more at the elementary. And that includes Encyclopedia Britannica Online, and then Pebble Go, which is a primary database that we've been very excited about. We're piloting it in my building this year. It has biography, science, and social studies on primary level up to about grade 3. And then our curriculum recommendations, we did complete a scope and sequence for K-8 last summer that we think turned out really well. We need to finish that and do one that goes from 9 to 12. And then rewrite our North Hills School District information literacy curriculum to develop students as information literate, independent learners, and digitally responsible. So the emphasis there is on integrating technology skills and then also digital citizenship and responsibility. And then finally, our facility recommendations. We put in our proposal minor updating for the Westview Library Lab to improve utilization of the space and bring it on par with the other elementary buildings. I don't know how well you can see that picture, but right now, all the computers in the Westview Library Lab face the outside wall. So if you were in the front of the classroom, all the students are facing the exterior walls. Like, okay, let's just take all those people and turn them around the other way. Like, that's not what we're looking for in terms of interactive learning. So that was, Westview was the first school that was remodeled, and computers were not on par with what they are now. And so we're looking to update Westview so that they can have the same experience the other elementary schools can. Oh yeah, and then renovating our secondary libraries, which you're more than aware of and have been very supportive, and I know Dr. Taylor's going to talk and give an overview of that later. Any questions?
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Spicer. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I would assume I'm to go on.
That's absolutely.
Thank all of you who have made your presentation. It's really educational. I always believe that we learn every day, and it's so wonderful to have so many great people who are here with us to help us keep up with things. So thank you very much. On the education agenda, there is the summer math program for grades 3 and 4. Does anyone have any questions concerning this?
I do, yeah.
Dr. Taylor or Dr. Kane?
I have comment, question, and clarification, I guess, I would say. Looking at the data and looking at this, I find this unsettling. As you said, I'm sure you're not surprised, but I think as I see this, we took a unproven program. We didn't call anybody for any feedback. We spent the money on it, and we had all this training. Then we hired a math coach, and then training. Now, we were told, and I don't know if everybody's aware, the parents were told, you don't understand it because you were not taught that way, but your kids will understand it. And looking at this, apparently that is not the case. Especially the third grade is troubling to be down like that. These are the kids that have pretty much the most in the math and focus, especially the kids that were in the pilot program. They've almost had nothing but math and focus, but yet the last 2 years, we've lost, we have to get 8.5% back just to get, if you look at this data, we were pretty flat for a while. We were 90.5 average over a 5-year period prior to this. So we have to get 8.5 points back just to get back to where we were. And so when I had a couple questions on the program itself. We say we're going to have a maximum of 15 to a class, or that's recommended. Is this 5 to 6 teachers, so is this going to be 45 kids per grade level, or?
We don't know yet. We are planning on, as the information indicates, having 4 sources of data to select the children most in need. We also have to consider those children too who came into our district, who enroll in the district new.
So we're not putting a limit on this. This could be
I need to
50
find
kids,
out.
it could be 200 kids?
I don't think it's going to be that high, plus the fact we have to depend on the parents to be able to find transportation and time to have the children enroll, because we experience the same situation with our literacy program. Parents mean well, but if they're working, sometimes they have a problem having the children attend. So there are many factors involved in that.
Okay, and then I had a question on the, if we say we're going to have 15 in a class, you're asking for teachers and TAs. So, I mean, we have our class policy for, I can't remember, what is it, 23 for a regular class of 3rd and 4th grade? So if we have 15 in a class, why are we asking for both teachers and TAs?
Whenever you're working with children who have a special need because they're struggling, you need a smaller class size because you have to meet the needs of those children. And if we have teaching assistants, they can be working with a group while the teacher's working with another one, and they change a focus. So you really have to work with smaller groups of children who are struggling than in a whole large classroom.
Yeah, and that was my question, because we were going to 15, 23 to 15.
And I really don't know right now, this is just anticipating what the need is going to be. I don't know until we start to get, if this is approved and we have parents sign up, then I will know, but otherwise I don't know.
And then I did have a question, and you mentioned the, on a reading program, it says here it's been highly successful, but I don't remember how long we've been doing that, but when I look at the PSSA reading test, it looks pretty flat. So I don't, how are we defining highly successful? I don't see that in the PSSA scores.
We know that children who are struggling in reading and in math, if they aren't supported over the summer, they will lose a lot of information of what they thought they knew. So we have to support them. If we don't, our scores, I'm sure, would be a lot lower.
Yeah, and I understand, but we were at 90.5 before without all this.
Yeah.
Before we went to the Math and Focus, we were 90.5 for several years, so.
Well, what we are, and I think Jeff can speak with this, about this, because he has all the data, and Cody Russell has been looking at the data also. And we do, our students in the upper levels are doing very, very well.
But which upper levels? Because I noticed the two math spikes were in the 8th grade and the SATs, which are not related to Math and Focus.
And they also keep changing the PSSAs. So, I mean, and it's a moving target. It really is.
I understand it's a moving target, but still, I mean, we're down when, you know, some of the other schools, I mean, I was looking at some of the other schools, and similar to ours. I mean, like Thomas Jefferson and Moon. I mean, they have elementary schools that are still scoring 95, you know, 94, 95, 96%, and I'm not even counting. I didn't even count Fox Chapel. Fox Chapel's higher than that. The one elementary school was in, I think, the top 10 in the state. I'm not counting that because, but, you know, you look at the Thomas Jefferson, they're pretty similar to us.
Do they have they have a similar program that we have?
No, I mean, like in socioeconomics, you know.
No, excuse me for interrupting you, but the question I have is this. I'm assuming this district isn't the first district ever to try this Singapore math program. That's what we're talking about here,
Well,
correct?
it is around here. I mean, it was the first.
But what about other?
There's a school district in the northern area who has adopted the program. But what I need to say about this is, and the research, everything that I've been reading, and I look for it all the time. We do know that, and even with the PA Corps, children have to know concepts. They can't survive on knowing a procedure anymore. They have to understand why they're doing things. That isn't easy. Some children are really struggling with that, and we have to support them. And the only way that we can support them is in the summertime or in small groups, but it's a total way of, it's a different way of learning. But unless you, in fact, we would have more students in higher math at the secondary level if we help them and support them at the elementary. Then they're going to understand why they're doing what they're doing. Right now, even I learned a procedure. I wish I hadn't, but I did. And I believe I would be better at math now if I knew why I was doing what I was doing. And I feel strongly about that.
Well, I understand we need to know things like that, but is this about, I mean, as I said, the data shows would indicate we're on a downward trend, especially with these baseline students, the students that are down at the core level. Like it says, these third graders taking this test, the kids in the pilot program especially, they've almost known nothing but the Singapore math. But yet, are they getting it? I mean,
Obviously not.
We are working now. Cody Russell is looking at where the gaps are. We're having the teachers use pacing guides so that we are carefully monitoring what's happening. And I would suspect and I hope that we're going to really fill in that gap. But we have to live with the program, and they tell us it takes 3 to 5 years to implement a program and implement it well. And we're on our way. I really believe we are. And the teachers are trying their very best, and they're seeking help. And I support that.
well, I'm sure they're trying their best, but what data do you have to show that we're well on our way?
Can I just jump in? We have a lot of data that shows that our students are scoring actually a lot higher on the advanced level than they ever have in the history of this district. And teachers have reported back to us that they feel their students are learning math at a much greater depth than they ever have. Mr. Thomas is sitting here, he teaches 4th grade. Feel free, what is your impression on how the kids are learning?
I was going to ask if...
This is anecdotal, this isn't data, but just earlier this evening, between being at school and coming to this meeting, I was checking a set of math tests for Chapter 6, fractions and mixed numbers. And I was kind of thinking to myself, you know, kind of rehearsing what it is that I've got to say to the students about the overall performance on this test. And honestly, the thing that ran through my mind is that I would be able to tell these students that they have performed better with this material than any group of students I have had in my 22 years as a 4th grade teacher. And I cannot say that this is a set of academic all-stars. This is very much a group of students that run the gamut from lower ability students through high ability students. And what I'm seeing is that there's an overall understanding and proficiency with number that I have not seen in previous years. And again, in those previous years, I felt like I was a very good math teacher and my students were succeeding very well. One of the things that I would ask you to consider as you look at data over the years is that you're looking at math as it was tested 5 years ago as opposed to the way it will be tested this year or next year. And what we're trying to do is prepare the students for the rigor and the standards that they'll be held to in the future, not what they've been held to in the past. It is notching up across the board. It is much more rigorous. And one of the things that as teachers we have to remind each other about, it's also the law. This is not a matter of policy. We have got to meet these standards. And I think Mr. Taylor's right, Dr. Taylor's right, that the data you've got so far does indicate a district that's performing at a high level and moving in a positive direction.
I don't understand how 82%, you compare that, okay, to like First Street Elementary School in Cannon McMillan, 94.5. I mean,
Totally different
it's the same
demographic.
tech. I mean, it's the same.
It's a totally different demographic. You cannot compare that. I grew up in Canamac. I graduated from there.
Yeah,
You can't compare those demographics.
We're not talking Fox. We're not talking up. I'm not even considering Upper St. Clair, Fox Chapel. Cannon McMillan's Cannonsburg, and North. My brother-in-law lives there.
And South Point is there.
Understand.
And First Street students, a lot of them are coming from South Point.
I mean, there's several schools from Cannon McMillan on here.
It might make sense, I don't know if this would help, perhaps, because Joe, I certainly understand where you're coming from, and that it's obvious that the numbers speak for themselves, right? We get all that. Would it make sense if maybe we can prepare some data for Mr. Muhal with Cody and people, just
Well,
maybe help
Okay,
answer your
fine.
questions.
And I had a clarification, you know, I was surprised when I read this, it says most of the students are expected to come from McIntyre and Ross, but our SPP score for Ross is 97.1. And I understand that, you know, some of that is based on improvement within the bracket. Yeah, I mean, is it that skewed to that? I mean, how do we score a 97.1 but saying most of our students that need help are coming from the same school? And same with McIntyre. I mean, Ross and McIntyre are the two highest scoring elementary schools, but we're saying most of the kids that need help are coming from those two schools. I mean, it just doesn't seem.
If I could, I'd like to talk to you about that privately. It might be certain grade levels.
Yeah, as I said, we probably need, and I think it would help that they
We're talking third and fourth.
prepare
but-
some data, because
Right.
we don't have, like I said,
Yeah.
we kind of keep
I
going back
do
and
know
forth.
that-
And Joe makes good points. It's just a matter of trying to clarify what
And our reading
Dr. Kay and
program
Dr. Taylor are trying
is
to.
wonderful, the summer reading
Yeah.
program.
Okay.
And I'm sure once this math would get started, that it would be the same. I mean, the children really benefit from it, and I've had a neighbor one time calling me, she was upset that her child wasn't invited into the summer reading, and she believed she needed it, but, so it is
Yeah.
maintained.
Jeff, Marilyn, you can
I will
prepare some.
definitely work on getting you all the data,
Okay.
without a doubt.
That'd be helpful,
Okay.
very helpful. Jeff?
Take Lou, we'll work down the line.
Well, I think this is a vital program. Last year, I had at least 3 parents come to me and said, look, teacher recommended we get summer tutoring for the student. So, but they went to search for an organization that did summer tutoring. There's no one that does the math and focus tutoring. Now, one parent just recently told me that the son has really come along this year because the instruction level has probably improved. If we run this summer program, where are we going to get the instructors to do this? Will they be our teachers, or will we go out? Or
Yes, it will be.
Pardon me?
It will be our teachers.
We will have sufficient number of teachers that cover this.
If I get permission for this program, it will be posted.
Okay.
Go ahead, Annette.
Just two quick things. I noticed looking at some of the data that with the numbers, it looks like some of those were PSSA from various years as we go back.
Yes.
So maybe when you're getting the data, it would be interesting to see what the students were learning before they took those PSSAs, because I'm thinking some of this may have to do with the time lags between how they were taught and they were tested, and then we get the results. It could be a year or 2 years since that student actually was in the curriculum.
There are a lot of variables, yes.
You know, the other thing I want us to make sure that we kind of keep in mind is that we're talking about averages, but, you know, we've also got individual students. And so it's one thing to look at the average, but to me, if we've got even one student who's struggling, we owe it to them to get them where they need to be. So, you know, we could have a school that has 99%, but if we've got 1% of students and we need to help them get, you know, on the right path so that they're going to succeed, then it's worth it. You know, we need to do that for them.
Thank you.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be negligent on our part if we didn't go forward with this program. If they get put it this way, as far as I'm concerned, it's all about a foundation, building a foundation. And if we don't give them a strong foundation now with the 3rd and 4th grade levels, you can kiss the rest of the years goodbye, all right? And they're going to lose interest because they don't understand and everything else. I support the program. We need to do what we can to help these students get to where they need to be. I think the question, I'm not going to put words in Mr. Muhal's mouth, but this is my question, and it's maybe rhetorical, and when you can do some research or whatever, but the question is, why all of a sudden do we need to have a summer program of this magnitude now when we haven't in the past? And if we've had it in the past, from a math standpoint, I wasn't aware of it, and that's my fault. But I think it begs the question as to why do we have, what's the root cause of needing this many students, or having this many students need to spend a summer in, you know, learning math over again?
Well, here's, I have been let's say, I've been criticized in a way because we support our children with literacy, but we have not been supporting our children who have difficulty with math. And that's why I think we should, because it's just as important as literacy.
I think it's, I think it may be even a little bit more important, but that's just a personal opinion, but, oh, thank you.
I think we owe it to
Oh,
our
well,
children.
there's no question about it, we owe it to the students.
Right. Suniti?
I think this is a short-term situation too, because as our teachers become more adept at teaching the new math, there would be less of a need for this. I think we're looking at short-term, 3, 4, 5 years maybe.
I
Well,
think you're always going to need.
if that's the case, if that's the case,
And it's a new concept also.
right, but why, I guess going back to Mr. Muhall's point a couple years ago, why rush into a new concept? Why not be prepared and be prepared to hit the ground running? I think that was Mr. Muhall's point before you ever joined the board. Well, that was the criticism that we heard. I'm not going to point it to Mr. Muhall, but
Well, we'll certainly gather the data
We'll do
as
that.
best you can to address Joe's concerns, obviously, or questions, and see where we are with that. Michael?
I was struck by the comment that you made, Dr. Kane, about kids who won't be able to take advantage of this program because their parents work. And coming from my own family where both parents work, I know the struggles when you need to have in the summer the kids in different activities and the different hoops that you try to jump through to make it happen. So my question to you is there the potential to offer a segment of this program in the evening?
I hadn't thought of that. I hadn't thought of that.
I would strongly urge that you see if that's a possibility to accommodate those parents, because I'd hate to tell a kid that you can't get help because your parents work.
well, you know, that's a great point, Mike. And what about something online that the parents could work with the students? No? Bad idea?
I really think, well, we have started to have parent workshops, and we're going to have 3 in the daytime and 3 in the evening. We had one last week, and approximately 75 parents participated, which was delightful. And so I think, though, that parents are learning that they need to know the new concepts to help their child, because if they give one explanation that is not the way the child is being taught, we're just going to mix the children up. We really are. So we have to be careful what we're doing to children.
No, and that was really along the same line, because let's face it, I can't imagine very few, if any of us, that when we were youngsters didn't get help from our parents early on. And right now, with this program, what you're suggesting is the parents are at a significant disadvantage because it's a new approach and a new mindset, et cetera, et cetera. So really, it's falling on the shoulders of the teachers, and they're not getting assistance from the parents.
In a way, yes. The teachers have to help the children, yes.
And that could be part of the problem.
It could be.
Well, you know, just to quickly interject, if I may, change is difficult for everybody, and the older you get, the more difficult it is. And I can recall one of my grandchildren coming home and doing math with something with their fingers, and I said, why don't you just learn the tables? And then it dawned on me that's the way I learned, but they were actually quicker in what they did than I could recall some of the multiplication tables. So, you know, as I recall, we spent a fair amount of time investigating this math program. We had curriculum folks, we had expert teachers like Mr. Thomas get involved, and they all kind of agreed this was a direction that we ought to be moving in. And you know, I think we've hired some excellent people, and they're doing an excellent job, and we need to ease up maybe a little bit and let this progress as it should. I think there are safeguards in that would alert everyone if there was a problem, and they don't seem to have surfaced at this point. So I don't see it as a bad thing. I see it perhaps as something that I don't completely understand, but that I'm not in school anymore.
Well, and I appreciate that, and it's true. We are, as I said, we are helping children understand why they're doing what they're doing. And we're also using data. We are looking at it in detail so that we can find out if we have any gaps and where they are and what we're going to do about it. And we're taking action. I can promise you that.
I think the one thing that I would like to add is, with all the rules and regulations and testings and what these children must perform and must do, remediation will be necessary always, not just for 5 or 6 years, whether it be in reading or science or math. So I think this is a wonderful idea. I wish that this existed when my kids were in school, because they had a little bit of a problem with math.
Join the club.
No, I was good in math. Yeah. He just said to me, what about when you were in school? I was
good
in
abacuses
math,
back then,
but I
right?
bet I'm not good in math now.
Good, all right. I'm just
Anyway,
kidding.
I will go to the next thing. I would like to have a motion to add the education items to the legislative meeting agenda for approval.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, Mrs. Bender, thank you. It appears that we don't have anything under technology, Mr. Muha, unless I'm missing something.
No, we have the liaison update. We did have a technology liaison meeting on January 21st. Even though it was a long, relatively long meeting with a lot of discussion, the summary is kind of brief because there was a lot of spreadsheets and discussions. Basically, one thing what comes out of it at this time is we're certainly pushing back on the one-to-one initiative with the iPad. We don't see that as, initially it was talked about next year. We don't see the timing as being right for that right now. Instead, the direction that we want to go is to get more of the technology, more of the iPads and the carts and in the library to all the students through K to 12. And basically, that's what all these spreadsheets were about, is how exactly do we want to break this out, discussion on iPads, in the elementary schools versus iPad minis possibly, which would be cheaper, but, is that, some of the kids like the iPad minis at the younger age, and it's just continuing along with meetings. There'll be another liaison, meetings with the school, with the principals. There'll be another liaison meeting on March 3rd to go through what new technology do we want. There's also existing technology that will need replaced or updated, and how do we want to go through this? What exactly do we want? What exactly do we need? And then how are we going to pay for it, too?
Thank you.
Other than that, there's no items on technology.
All right, athletics and activities, Dr. Nolish, appears that we don't have anything under that.
No items tonight.
Okay,
for the
and
legislative meeting.
Mrs. Reed, it appears there's nothing under A.W. Beatty unless you have something to
No,
add.
I would just like to make a short announcement that the board would like to congratulate and wish good luck to the following students who are going to be in a competition. The first one is Natasha Connick, will be representing Beatty in Lake Harmony, PA in March for cake decorating. The following students will be representing Beatty in April in Hershey. They were district winners. We have first place, Frank Ciola, auto body. Natasha Connick again, pastry, North Hills. And Andrew Sutchin for ad design. We wish them all good luck.
Thank you.
Could we get Natasha at our next meeting for a
Bring in
demonstration?
That
Yeah,
I
bring in
would
some
like.
taste, absolutely. That's an order. Okay, we have a motion on that.
Maybe when we go out there for our meeting, huh?
Okay, exactly.
She can give us a speech.
Exactly.
I need the auto body guys.
All right, we'll move on to personnel. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Wogus. Personnel items are discussed in executive session, and they included resignations, appointments, change of status, and leave of absence. I would like to move that items 1 through 4 be added to the legislative meeting agenda for approval.
Second.
Thank you. Well, we've got are you ready for this, Mrs. Reed?
Oh, I think I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm going to really cut this short.
There's
Okay.
six items under.
What basically is happening here is we have 6 policies that we need to make amendments to, and what we are doing is, we are adding, under our all smoke-free environment policies, smokeless tobacco. The smoke-free environment will include the electronic cigarettes. And to go through each and every one of these policies is rather time-consuming, so what I will do is read each policy that it's going to affect, but what it is doing to each one, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Venata, is that we are including in our smoke-free environment electronic cigarettes. So bear with me one moment. Okay, policy number 222, smoke-free environment for pupils, revision, the first reading. Policy number 323, environment administrative employees, revisions, first reading. Policy 423, smoke-free environment professional employees, revision, first reading. Policy 704, smoke-free environment property, revisions, first reading. Policy 905, smoke-free environment community, revisions, first reading. Are there any questions?
Yes.
Mrs. Bender, go ahead.
I have a question. Is this a state law that we have to put the the electronic cigarettes in?
I'm not sure that it is a state law. It's recommended under all smokeless and tobacco products.
Okay. The only reason is, I'm a smoker, which everyone knows, and I probably should quit, but after all these years, I really don't believe I will. One of the big things is, as smokers, we are really persecuted. I don't know if that sounds real good, but it is. I mean, people are nasty and mean and so on. One of the ways I've seen people stop smoking is through this device, this electronic cigarette. And to me, it was a valuable thing. It was, I mean, I didn't use it, but it's a valuable thing, and now we're saying can't use that either.
Well,
I don't
we're
understand. I
talking
just don't understand.
students in school. I mean, I'm a smoker, everybody knows that, but I believe that this is necessary to include this in the policy, because if we don't, we could be looking at a student lighting up an electronic, whatever they're, in the classroom. What could you do with them? It's, everything has to be in a policy.
Are they, have you found this to be a problem?
There have been incidents where students
There
were
have
in
been.
possession of electronic cigarettes.
And they have possession. Have they been using them in the classroom? Okay, well, see, that's...
I think that was an extenuating circumstance.
Okay.
However,
I'm
example-
sorry, Mrs. Reed, I disagree with you, but
You gotta
I
get
just
4 more
wanted
to
to
agree
make
with
my
you.
statement, that's all. I mean, two smokers
I
are
think you better
fighting
recruit
over
4 more members.
electronic cigarettes.
If this doesn't pass, you can bring your
Oh, it will.
electronic cigarette
It
into the
will
boardroom
pass.
and light on up and see what happens.
It will pass.
Isn't it correct that
Yeah.
students aren't supposed to possess smoke products of any kind?
Correct.
So
Correct.
you're just,
Rather, yes, and so this is, so I think for policy, the 200 policy under pupils, this is a moot point.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
anybody under the age of 18 cannot purchase.
Well, I
and
know,
possess
but,
these
you know,
products.
this isn't just for students, this is
Right.
for everybody.
Right,
For
but
me,
so
too.
for the professional, for the classified,
Right.
for other employees and
I know.
persons on the property, I believe that it falls under that, because you can not only put, you know, perhaps a device there to assist people to stop smoking, but there are other things that can be smoked through electronic cigarettes as well, that we may not want to.
I understand, it's just that I just feel that
You're
To
persecuted.
me, cold turkey, well, that's tough, but, you know, that, it might be even a good thing. But I just wanted to make my opinion known right
Well,
off, that's
well,
all.
well, we know that. Absolutely. Thank you, Mrs. Bender. Mr. Kelly?
I just wanted a clarification, if I can, if I may, Dr. Banana. Do the policies all state no tobacco use on school property?
Mm-hmm.
And the policies are not strictly for students, I would think, because it
Right.
says professional employees
Right,
and
that's why
everybody
there's
else.
so
Right.
many.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
So one of the ways we could help smokers not smoking is to make sure that we reinforce with them these particular policies.
Smoking police we need.
Or a two before, whatever. Thank you.
That's right.
I have a number of questions.
For the policy?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Imagine that. For the students, for the pupils, it says, students are expected to fully comply with this policy. If one should choose to disregard the policy, disciplinary action as defined in the Student Code of Conduct will be enforced. Why don't we just put what the disciplinary action is going to be in the policy itself?
Because that may be modified annually based upon provisions, based upon situations.
What may
based
be
upon
modified?
The state. Right now, the state recommends that if a student is in possession of a tobacco product, smokeless or smokable, that they are fined for that.
Right.
That is a state, that's under PA school code.
Mhm.
That's a fine. If that is changed, then next year, we would have to, if we put those specifics in the policy, we would be amending our policies on an annual basis to keep up with that. So sometimes the policies will say in compliance with state law, in compliance with this, there will be disciplinary action.
At a minimum.
Right, but how much effort is it to amend, how much effort is it to amend the policy?
Rewrite it all here.
You have to have two readings of it.
We're arguing about it.
I'm just asking.
Yeah, it's just the fact that we amended to be inclusive to say we're going to, at a minimum, meet state code. That kind of covers us, and we're not back here all the time addressing policy like
But
this
it's,
twice, 3 times a
right, but
year.
it says the handbook, that's what I'm saying, and I don't know what's in the handbook like Dr. Vanetta, but
You approve the handbook as well, so that it kind of goes.
Don't we update the handbook every year? It's just one document, right? So any changes, we would get everything in one place. So it seems like it's more of a, maybe efficient. What you're going for, is you're saying is you're going for more efficient to get everything in just one document. We review the handbook and then refer the
Right.
policy to the handbook.
I don't think it would be that onerous, but that's okay, I know I'm alone here. The other question I have is, we talk about the employees, all right, may result in disciplinary action. Either it's going to result in disciplinary action or it's not. Why do we have may?
I believe that would be up to the discretion of those in charge of that
Right.
persons.
There may be extenuating circumstances that we're not thinking about now, but
Okay. Third question I have is, why do we have so many different policies to begin with? I mean, we can have one for students, we can have one for district employees, and we can have one for visitors. Why do I need 6 or 7? And they're saying basically the same thing. We're worried about efficiencies, all right? Why don't we just cut it down to the 3 major
It's just how the PSBA divides our policy under the recommendations that you have certain categories to address all of these different groups. So it's the policy manual and handbook that is really recommended by PSBA, as different policies address different pupils, different individuals, different employee classifications. And so if you basically would go to any district's website to look up their policies, you would see a similar breakdown of policies based upon pupils, employees, professional employees, service employees, property. So it's really just following along how our policy audit has laid out our policy guidelines and books.
All right. It sort of flies in the face of efficiencies, but I hear you. Lastly.
I don't disagree with you on the statement that why do we have multiple policies, but that's why we have it. It's the way policies are divided out to protect certain different groups of employees that are treated differently than students, that are treated differently on property, that are treated differently,
No,
for
no,
all the different categories.
I get that, but I had troubles distinguishing from the last two or three, because it seemed like that it was a lot of overlap.
They're pretty much identical.
I asked the exact same question. We've spoken about this.
Okay, and then lastly, in terms of notifying visitors, okay, that no smoking is not allowed on school grounds and school events, all right? We do it through the program. Not everybody's buying the program. Why don't we have no smoking signs prominently displayed at the entrances of the buildings, or on the fields, or at the entrance, say, at Martin Early Stadium?
I thought we do have some.
We
Maybe
do?
not everywhere.
I don't ever remember seeing it, but like I said,
Because most people go
Well,
out.
that's a
in
good
the street.
suggestion. I mean,
Yeah.
if we need to put signs around, the problem is, how many do you put out and where do you put them? You know, but that, I understand where you're going.
I mean, because, and the other thing is this, we're either, I don't know who asked the question, maybe it wasn't, but we need to enforce these. And I know people smoke. I don't particularly, I'm not a big fan of it, all right, but that's their business as far as I'm concerned. And people smoke on school grounds. Nothing is, it's never enforced. It's never enforced.
Yeah, well, get some smoke police going.
Well, we can look
Well,
into that and
yeah.
have
I think what I'd like to
security
see,
come up and send it down to the district judge for a fine.
Yeah, we could hire another security guard to be a smoking policeman.
We'll have the smoking.
That's, you're missing the point.
We get it. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I would like to see some receptacles, at least at the administration building, because you walk up to the front door there, and you see cigarette butts, and there's one in the snow down there right now for the last 3 days, and they're all kind of butts around the bulletin
That's
board.
terrible.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, people coming up, okay. All good points. Boy,
Okay,
Lot of
to move
discussion.
along here. I move that policy items 1 through 6 be added to the legislative meeting agenda for second reading and approval.
Second.
thank you,
Well, thank you.
thank you, that was
I feel
interesting.
like I need a cigarette after that.
Yeah, that's right. Let's take a smoke break. Let's take a smoke break.
And I don't
was a
smoke, and I
fun
never
There
have.
you go. Give me a
That's
lucky,
wonderful.
give me a lucky strike
Let's
while
have
you're
a
at it. All right, Mr. Yeomans, looks like we have a liaison report for community and intergovernmental relations.
Yeah, it's a tough word, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it sure is.
Anyway, okay, I have one item. It's not officially on the agenda, but we were approached by the Ross Township. They were approached by a business group in the community about the idea of a tax amnesty program on our business privilege and mercantile tax, which is collected by the district for the district and Ross Township. Westview collects theirs on their own. So we decided we would meet with them and invite the Westview folks along as well. So it was myself, Mrs. Bender, and Mr. Nudie, along with Dave, at the meeting, and with Bruce Fromlack, well, he wears lots of hats in
Had a lot of
Westview,
hats.
along with Kathy Mann, their tax collector, and then it was Steve Corbel, John's sponsor, from the Board of Commissioners of Ross, and their township manager, Doug Sample. So we met and we first, we discussed the plan that was presented to the township by the business group, and we immediately determined that the terms of that proposal were far too liberal, and we decided first if we thought this was something worth pursuing, which there seemed to be a general consensus that there could be some value to a limited time tax amnesty, an attempt to get people who may not know that they were required to pay these taxes, to give them the opportunity to come out of the shadows and get on the rolls, and get into compliance. As you can see in your materials, we came to a consensus around a program that would have several stipulations, and I'm not going to go through every item. Hopefully you've had the chance to review these and look at these, and each governing authority was to take this back to their respective boards to see if there was consensus to gain approval, because there'd be really no sense in one doing it without all the others doing it as well. So it's here, it's before you. So I would, ask if you have any questions about any of those terms.
I just had, you said the business owners actually came forward. So is there a lot of delinquent taxes out there?
Well, I don't think we know. I mean, we collect delinquent taxes every year, but there may be certain classifications of tax income that some people might not know they owe, particularly the fact that our business privilege tax covers property rental. And if you wanted to ask any further questions about what might be out there, I mean, Dave might be able to address that, but I don't think there's really any way of knowing, what the total is that we might be, what we could stand to gain from this. But the theory is that if you give people an opportunity to first you educate, there'd be an education portion to this if we approve this. All three governing bodies would get together to try to educate the public about who owes this tax. And then they would have to comply, they would have to comply with all of these stipulations that we agreed to.
I guess the question I have is what other efforts are being put forth to collect back or do business mercantile taxes?
Well, Dave can probably address that. I know we do have an employee whose job that is primarily.
We have been collecting delinquent taxes forever. We've put a real focus on the mercantile business privilege tax the last couple of years, ever since Keystone took over the earned income tax collections. And if you look at your revenue numbers, you'll see a significant growth in delinquent business privilege and mercantile tax collections. An awful lot of that is from pretty small. I think I hit Siri there, didn't I?
Siri is going to tell us how much we can collect.
Sorry, Siri. Anyhow, if you look at that, an awful lot of the growth has been in fairly small businesses, a lot of it in Schedule C businesses, a lot of which the people really didn't or don't see themselves as a business. For example, if you have a house that you rent out, you are in fact in business. And that rent is a gross proceed, and it is subject to the business privilege tax. If you have a duplex, you live on one side and you rent out the other side, you are in the business of renting out the one side. And your rent is subject to the business privilege tax. If you own a business and you own a piece of property, and you rent your piece of property to your business, that is a business in and of itself, and you owe the business privilege tax on the rental income that you paid yourself because you structured yourself as two separate entities. So there's a number of those types of things where people have a legitimate argument that they may not have been aware that the business privilege tax applied in their circumstance.
Okay, so I think for me, the real question is, what's the downside of pursuing a program such as what Mr. Yeomans is proposing?
Well, we debated that in our meeting with the commissioners and the borough council people from Westview, and that's why, again, the original proposal was put before us was we all deemed it to be way too liberal, and you can see the one we're proposing has many rules and restrictions attached to it. Basically, they're getting, what we propose is that they would have the penalty waived going back on 7 years of the taxes due. They would still have to pay the interest, but the penalty would be waived.
And they would still pay the tax?
And they would have to pay the tax upfront in full
Plus the
immediately.
interest for 7 years.
Plus the interest for 7 years.
And prior to 7 years, they would not pay the tax?
Right.
Was there a rationale for picking the 7 years? or-
I think it's,
Is that the
that's
standard?
it, record keeping.
It's the standard record keeping?
Yeah.
Okay, so you just picked it to be in line with the
Right.
IRS?
It's 7 years, Dave? 7 years?
7 years.
Mr. Nudi?
Or as long as, from the date you went into business. It could be, if it's 5 years, 3 years, whatever, the date you went into business.
There is no statute of limitations, just so you know.
Well,
If you
that's-
didn't file a tax return, legally, there is no statute of limitations, and technically, you can go back to whenever that business started in business. But for the most part, the IRS only requires record keeping for 7 years.
But I think one of the things that, I don't think there'd be a tremendous number of takers on this program, or, because the Economic Development Committee came up with the idea that we would, was it 2 years or 3 years, refund all the
2 years,
2 years,
13 and 14.
13 and 14, to refund the penalties and interest paid on business privilege taxes for the last 2 years.
Well,
And we
yeah,
already
I also suspect there are a lot of people who Dave has called out for tax collection that are expecting to get some relief as a result of this. Those people will not be subject to this. If you've been notified that you owe money, you will not be given the relief from the penalty and interest.
And the corollary to the amnesty is that once the amnesty's over, we will be continuing to be very aggressive in catching non-compliers.
I just had, you mentioned about the education, and that's what, how are you going to get that out? Because although some businesses might be members of some association and might get this information very easily, but like, especially small renters, like, somebody just has maybe one duplex, I mean, they still might,
Yeah,
probably
and
still owe that.
that's something we need to discuss, and I imagine Amanda will be in touch with her counterparts at Ross Township and Westview, and I'm sure our friends in the media will help us spread the word as well. As you see it here, we're contemplating a program that would run from January 1 to December 31 of this year. So we would spend that time, if all three bodies approve this, we would spend that time putting together a plan to try to reach, to get this message out as broadly as possible.
June 1, not January.
Did I say January? I'm sorry, June 1.
Thank you. Anything else?
So I don't know if it's appropriate to ask to add this to the next week's agenda at this point, if I would have a motion for that.
Would you like to make a motion to do that?
I would make a motion to add this to our legislative agenda.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Yeomans. We'll move on now to finance, and that would be Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Wilgus. In keeping with our theme this evening of providing entertainment as well as information, I would ask Mr. Hall, our Director of Finance and Operation, to present a thrilling update on the 2015-16 budget.
Okay, on January the 29th, we held the first of 4 Public Budget Committee meetings for this year. This is the, I believe, 23rd year for the Public Budget Committee, and we've always had pretty good turnout, but I was particularly pleased with this year. Had a lot of new people and a really good attendance at the meeting. The first meeting of the Public Budget Committee every year is always about revenues. So we start off the meeting, if I can make this go, by reviewing the current budget and giving people an idea of what the budget is, what it's made up of, and then we go into the revenue side. The first thing we did was we went through some graphs to show people the big picture. looking at revenues, the big picture is that 76% of our revenues are generated here in the community. 23% is from the state, and 1% is from the federal government. So by far, the biggest chunk of money is coming from local sources. Those local sources are made up of a number of items, the biggest piece of which is the real estate tax. So the real estate tax is 81% of the 76% that the local tax is made up, so it's about 65% of your total revenues. Nice big blue chunk here. Then you got your earned income tax, your delinquent taxes, a couple miscellaneous taxes, and other local revenues. So between the real estate tax, earned income tax, and delinquent taxes, you're looking at almost 95% of local revenues. Look at the state revenues. The biggest item is the basic subsidy. When you're reading in the newspaper about state funding of schools, usually they're talking about the basic subsidy, which is that item there. Second biggest item is the retirement subsidy. That's where the state funds approximately 1/2 of our retirement costs. A few years ago, that would have been either the smallest or the second smallest slice of this pie. As you can see, it's now the second largest slice of the pie. As retirement costs continue to grow, the retirement subsidy continues to grow. Then you got your special ed subsidy, debt service subsidy, transportation, FICA, and then you got this piece here called the homestead. That slice of the pie is the money from the gaming funds that the state gives us so that we can give them back to the homeowners as a homestead exemption. So that's just the big picture of what a revenue budget for the school district looks like. Then we looked at the big picture of what the expenses look like for our budget. And being the people-oriented organization that we are, salaries make up 45% of the budget, and benefits make up another 23%. The salary and benefits combined are about 68% of the budget, followed by debt service, charter, vocational, and other tuitions, transportation, reserves, utilities, and other. All the other things that you normally think of when you think of education is this little slice right here. If I can get my pointer working. So all the books, all the supplies, all the computers, all the software, all the things that you normally think of when you think of education is really one of your smaller slices of your total expenditure pie. So after giving an overview, we then started talking about what are the significant things that are going to impact revenues in 2015, 2016. By the way, each of you should have this as a handout in your packets. But looking at that, the biggest item that's going to impact your revenues for 2015-16 is obviously the biggest revenue item, real estate taxes, and the things that are going on with real estate taxes. The biggest news in real estate taxes is still the 2012 reassessment. 2012 reassessment still has significant properties under appeal. This particular spreadsheet shows you that in 2012, the reassessment showed us with assessed value of $2,893,000,000 in assessed property. As of January 2nd, 2015, our assessed value was $2,783,000,000 for a reduction of $110 million. So since the reassessment, which drove the reduction in our tax rate from 21 mils to 17 mils, the appeal process has reduced assessments by $110 million. As of December 2014, there were still $91,160,000 worth of properties under appeal in the courts. Those properties include most of your big commercial properties, your Sears, your Macy's, all those are major retail structures are still under appeal at the courts. So the question becomes, how much are you going to lose? How much more are you going to lose in assessed value as these make their way through the final appeal process? Just so you know, I am estimating a loss of additional $18 million of assessments, and that's what I'm basing my budget on. Other big items for questions for next year would be the state funding. And to be honest with you, I have no idea where we're going to end up with state funding. Our new governor obviously ran his election on funding for education. He also has to contend with a sizable deficit in the budget to start with. And the question as to whether or not there will be tax increases to fund that deficit, let alone increases in educational funding as well as other funding needs throughout the state. So to be honest, that is going to be a big question mark in the whole budgeting process, is what's going to happen with state funding. Next big thing then was we looked at the review of proposed 2015-16 revenues in more detail and put this nice spreadsheet up here so that all you folks could see tiny little numbers. Each of you have it in your packet. Just to give you an overview of it, it shows you 4 years of actual for each line item in the revenue budget, shows you the current budget and what I'm proposing for 2015-16, how much that changed, what the percentage is, and lastly, a nice column of notes, numbered notes, and in your packet, there are notes that correspond with that to explain how I got to each one of these numbers. And that's how the revenue budget is generated. As of right now, I am proposing or assuming a real estate tax with no tax rate increase. So you can see that's the big item. It's actually down from the current year's budget. It is not up very much from actual 2013-14 and is still below what we actually received in 2012-13 before the reassessment. So technically, no matter what's happened with the rates, we have essentially the same real estate taxes as we had 4 years ago, absent a tax increase. Any questions? I know that was a very, very quick review of a 2-hour meeting, but, yes, sir.
I have a quick question for you. You're talking about the third largest expenditure that this district has is the servicing the debt.
Yes, sir.
And I know I asked this question a few years back, and allow me to ask it again. Is there any possibility that we can refund any of our outstanding bonds to take advantage of the low interest rates?
No, none of our bonds are currently, would benefit from a refinancing.
Thank you.
That's something we watch real carefully.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Hall?
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Hall.
If I may, I'd like to just personally and on behalf of the board thank Dave Hall for an excellent job, certainly at the public budget meeting. With all of the appeals that can possibly occur, and they can drag out for a considerable amount of time, it is, in my estimation, almost an impossible task to build a budget based on hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars of potential lost revenue due to the appeals. So our thanks to Mr. Hall for that. Moving right along, the remainder of the Finance Committee consists of approving our general fund bills, our construction bills, budget transfers, the payroll for the month of January 2015, and the acceptance of the 2014 fiscal year audit report, and the treasurer's report May 31st through December 31st of 2014. If If there are no questions on that, we can move forward, and I would therefore move that items 2 through 7 under Finance be added to the legislative meeting agenda for approval.
Second.
Thank you. We can move to Sports Services. That would be Mr. Nudi.
Thank you, Mr. Wilgus. There's one informational item on the agenda for this evening. Dr. Jeff Taylor is going to give us a status update on the secondary library's renovation.
Basically, I'll make this very brief. I attached basically a timeline to the agenda item so that you can see the number of meetings we've had so far with the architects, with our teachers, our librarians, our administrators, to come up with conceptual designs for the secondary library project. And we are currently at a status where they gave us 3 draft conceptual designs, we reviewed them, we gave them feedback, and now they're working on a revision of that conceptual design. I expect that within the next 2 weeks. Thomas & Williams are looking at putting funds to those designs, and so I say with the next 2 weeks I should have another update for you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions?
I don't have a question. I'd just like to make a comment at this point. Number one, I want to thank Dave Hall for sending to the board the minutes from our last meeting that we had. We all received that. And then this particular outline, Dr. Taylor, I think it's important for us as a board to know what has taken place and what will continue to take place. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Doesn't appear we have any items in there for adding to the legislative meeting for support services.
There are no additional items for sports service to be added at legislative meeting.
Thank you. Well, we come to the last section of the meeting where it's additional public comments, if anybody would like to address the board. There being none, I guess we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Meeting adjourned.
To ask me.